This video is about the pond that I built in my backyard. It would not have turned out so good without the help and the guidance of Eric Triplett, the pond digger. I watched all his YouTube videos and he gave me a lot of professional advice. Luckily for me, he lives nearby. I gotta say, he is really great working with DIYers like me. If you are thinking about building a pond, I definitely recommend giving him a call. Originally, my plan was to build an 8 by 11 pond here on the side of my house. It's kind of dead space for me. However, when Eric arrived at my house and saw my open backyard, said I was crazy of not building a pond in this open area here. So he recommended that I build a pond in the open backyard where I'd be able to see the pond from the master bedroom, living room, and the kitchen. One of the issues he asked me is what were my plans with all the excess dirt. I told him I was thinking about building a retaining wall, but I had issues with my back fence not being level. So he recommended that I build a curvy retaining wall. So here I am building a curvy retaining wall. For any retaining wall, the first row is the most important. And as you can see, I got a nice solid base with enough gravel behind the wall to help out with the California rainfall. Because my back fence is not level, I decided to incorporate some steps into my retaining wall so that the back fence isn't so obvious. And as you can see, this is what I was talking about for my fence not being level. The steps I incorporated, they look like waves in my backyard here. This is the original pond that my koi fish and turtle lived together in harmony for about 2 years. Originally, this is the location that Eric recommended. So I laid out the tarp so that my wife had a visual of the pond. At this point in time, the pond had grew from a 8 by 11 foot pond to 11 by 16 foot pond. However, before we even started digging, it grew even bigger. After Eric left, I decided to add a smaller but shallower area, and I wanted the waterfall to be the main focus point. And as you can see in this picture here, where the large vases, that's where the waterfall was going to be. Even Eric was surprised when he arrived at how the pond had grew, but he was positive that he can make it work. I asked Eric to bring in a backhoe because I did not think my jackhammer was going to last after digging this hole, and I don't think I would be able to last after digging this hole because all the work that I've been doing in the past have all been me and my jackhammer. Plus, this is where I really prefer the professional to handle the work. Eric and the backhoe operator, they work well together. They knocked this out in about 5 hours. Even Eric even laid some of the plumbing since we had the equipment here. So the final measurement for the pond is now 16 feet wide, 25 feet long, 4 feet deep in the deep end, 2 feet in the shallow end. Plus, there's a location for a natural tunnel in which the fish can either swim through, hide, or even swim over if they want. And here is the final shape, just the way I envisioned it. Really, this is how I envision my pond to be. Here, this job really should have been handled by 7 additional guys, but I was able to lay out this liner by myself. It took me all day because this liner was heavy. It was all folded up. I had to unfold it and maneuver it around so that would fit the whole pond. Quite a bit for one person to maneuver, I'll tell you that. Every time the pond digger stopped by to help with a task, luckily he would bring in a load of rocks for me with him. I was the one that carried all these rocks into the pond, and I was the one that stacked them inside the pond. And yes, I even stacked the heaviest rocks by myself. Here I used a dolly and a plank to get the big rocks into place. Once the rock was on the plank, I left gravity help out. The only thing is I had to make sure that the rock ended up in the right place at the right side, because once it was in place, it was very difficult to move the rock around. I had to be careful not to tear the liner, which I did. I put in 3 holes in my liner. Luckily though, I knew it and I was able to fix it, and there was no leak, so everything was fine. And I mixed I mixed some of the large heavy rocks, and I put them alongside the location in which the underwater lights would highlight them. Each time Eric uh, stopped by, he would bring in 2 tons of rocks for me. But let me tell you, it did not last long. That was a lot of rocks, but now it's starting to look like a pond from the master bedroom. The pond digger sent his best to help set the coping stones on the shallow end. The coping stones was a 2-man job, and here I really wanted the best people to do this part of the job. And now you see why I asked the pond digger to set the coping stones. You can actually walk on these stones and get right up to the edge of the water. That's really what I love the best. But before they left, they even set some of the character stones on the deep end, and then I was able to fill in the middle parts with my own rocks. And again, you can sit, stand on any of these character stones. That really is the workmanship of a pro, where you can get right up to the edge of the pond and not have to worry about the rock giving way and falling into the pond. Yep, I think the deep end now is ready for inspection. And here I'm bringing in the inspectors to check out the workmanship and tell me what they think, if they find anything wrong. Looks like the bottom is looking pretty good. Actually, my son really wanted to camp out that night in the at the bottom of the pond. He just wanted to sleep out under the stars, looking up at the stars, seeing what the fish would be looking at when they're in the pond. On the shallow end, I placed a floating rock. Uh, there's plumbing underneath this rock for my filtration system. I had to get the rock up off the gravel. And it took a while because this rock is not light, and the supporting rocks kept moving underneath it. Every time that I tried to put the big rock in place, the supporting rocks would move around. So it was a pain to get set in place, but I think the results look great. It looks cool right there in the middle of the shallow area there. And in the middle between the deep end and the shallow end is where I got that natural tunnel. And that is actually right here. You can kind of see the natural tunnel. So the fish can either swim through there or they can go above it. So the only thing now that's missing is the water. Here's my daughter with her leopard gecko. They're taking pictures of the turtle and the fish before I actually moved them. And as you can tell, her gecko is quite the pet. Um, Sitting there looking like he's checking everything out. Here is the villain that caused all this work. Even though she did not eat the koi fish, she did take bites out of their fins and their tails. I think there were times where the fish were trying to get food the same time that she did, and she got their fins. Uh, but it was just a matter of time before she would have grabbed one of them. You know, in a 25-gallon pond, there really isn't much room for everybody to swim around in. And here are my koi fish. I had three, but the two white ones in the picture here, they died several months later. A while back, a while after getting the pond set up, we had some heavy rainfall over here, and I think the rain threw my pond out of balance, and they died on me. And one of the biggest things was when the water turned green, I was not able to monitor the fish, so I wasn't able to catch it before they pass away. Um, but up until that time, it was very easy to tell that they enjoyed the open space. They loved swimming around the deep end and the shallow end. And so now it is time to fill the pond. I figured the pond could hold about 6,000 gallons of water. The city, unfortunately, would not consider my pond as a swimming pool, so I could not get a discount for filling up my pond. If it was a swimming pool, they would have gave me a discount for the initial fill up, but for my pond, they would not consider it. So I ended up having to watch how much water I would fill up each month. So the filling process literally took several months because I had to watch that. I didn't go over my water usage and get fined for excess of water. But to my luck, Mother Nature was here and she helped fill up, I figure probably around 3,000 to 4,000 gallons into my pond. And my kids are playing in the rain there. I used the liner to help collect as much water as I could, so I spread out the liner. I propped it all up, so as it rained, all that water would go straight into the pond. And here you can see the fish are enjoying the fresh water there. However, like I said, shortly after all the rain, the pond turned green, and this is when I lost two of my koi fish. All right, let's get back to the build out. So here's some of the plumbing work that I did. I laid out the pipes to the waterfall and to the bog area there. I installed a under gravel filtration system that pulls the water through the bottom gravel and into the pump. I did all the plumbing for this one with the help of guidance of the pond digger. However, my work does not compare anything to the pond digger's work. Here you can see he did the plumbing for my pump, And let me say, it was impressive watching the master at work. Here's the conduit lines that I ran. This is for the lights to go to the bog and to the waterfall. I don't have much lights hooked up quite yet, though. I'm going to go back to the biggest issue that I had to overcome, and that was what to do with all this dirt. And here you see my son checking out the big piles of dirt in our backyard. And I ended up I ended up sifting all of this dirt. Um, and believe me, I had more rocks than dirt to sift. As you can see, we had a lot of dirt, we had a lot of rocks, and it took several months to sift out all of that dirt. All the good dirt ended up going behind the retaining wall, backfilling in the retaining wall. So now when I plant plants in there, I'm not constantly hitting rocks when I'm putting in the plants. And all the rocks I was able to use for helping set up the foundation and also for other projects that I did. I ended up having to haul out several tons of rocks to a neighbor down the road. He took some of my rocks too. And all the rocks I removed, I replaced with these rocks. So go figure. Take out rocks, add in rocks. This here is the bog area. Bog area is a wetland that's usually full of plants in the lakes and ponds. It helps filtrate the water. Um, for me, I was wanting to build a mini bog to help filtrate my pond there. I wanted to incorporate the original pond in with the larger pond. So I decided to turn it into a mini bog. So here I am setting up the mini bog area. My design here is to incorporate a small creek to go from the bog and have it flow back into the pond here. And there are areas around the outside of the bog area. These little cutouts, my plan is to eventually put succulent plants in here to kind of help enhance the curb appeal of the bog area. And the creek area is going to be lined with large lava rocks. Originally, I bought these lava rocks thinking that they would go for the waterfall, but because the waterfall was so huge, I would have had to purchase so many more. So I'm putting it into this creek, but I love these lava rocks because they offer a pooling effect. So as the water's coming down, it can pool up and on its way down to the pond. And I love that pooling effect area there. And here is the creek as it's flowing towards the pond. Now it's time to start on the main feature, and that is the waterfall. Here I'm building a retaining wall, and I'm setting it up so that I got a pathway that walks behind, so that you can walk behind the waterfall. So my waterfall is not going to be like in a corner where most of them are. Mine is literally the centerpiece in which, so now I got to make it look good on all sides. So I ended up setting up the plumbing here. I'm packing down the good dirt, getting everything around the waterfall, getting it all set up for the pond digger. Now my waterfall is unique because I wanted three different waterfalls, but I wanted it so that two of the falls I can turn on and off when need to be. So if I got guests coming out and I'm entertaining, I can turn on the two waterfalls. But when it's just a normal day, we can turn it off. However, I wanted all three of these waterfalls to look as if it's one waterfall. So when it's all running, it looks like one waterfall. Now is the time for the pro to take charge. And again, I gotta say, it is great watching the master in action. The pond digger and his crew came in and they really took their time ensuring that each rock was in place, were in the right spot at the right angle. Some of these rocks, it took all four of us to move, but by the end of the day, we were only able to finish the first layer. I can't tell you how many rocks we removed over and over again until we found the right rock. Eric did not just throw any rock into any space. Let me tell you, he was very meticulous with each rock. He walked around the pond at different angles, looking at the rocks. I mean, he really took the time to make sure each rock was in its right place. And if it wasn't, if he didn't like it, we chucked it out and we tried something different. Um, and let me tell you, it is awesome to watch him do this. This was the whole reason why I wanted Eric to work on the waterfall, because there is no way I could have done this myself. You know, it would have looked amateur. And so that is why I called in the pro. I had a vision in my head. I knew what I wanted the waterfall to do, but it really was up to the pond digger to turn this vision into reality, and he did a damn good job. Again, I'm so glad I called him in to do this work for me. All three waterfalls worked like a charm. It looks like one big waterfall, and it's the exact vision that I wanted. When I got all three running, it's one pond or one waterfall. However, when I turn off the side waterfalls, they'll dry up, and it looks like just a regular dried water, or just like a dry creek. And that was the vision that I was going for this waterfall. Again, I really got to thank Eric, the pond digger, his crew, for doing such a spectacular job with this waterfall, this feature here. I mean, he really nailed my vision. And again, I didn't have any of this on paper. I tried to explain to him what I envisioned and how I kind of wanted everything to flow, and he really was able to nail it. This last spring, the pond was full. The flowers were blooming, the trees were blooming, and now the pond is really starting to pop. But I had to clean up the green water here. We still had this green water that I had to overcome. And the best way to get rid of the green water was putting in some aquatic plants. So I put in some aquatic plants in the pond. And after about 3 months, the pond cleared up, and now I can finally see the bottom. Uh, some of the fish ate some of my plants already, so I'm gonna have to buy some more. Some of the plants didn't do too well in the Lake Elsinore heat, so I won't be able to use those plants anymore. But the plants that did survive really made the pond come alive. Now the pond is really looking like a pond. I even made some floating islands um, for in the pond for the koi fish to hide underneath, and they really love the floating ponds that I made for them. This is a lot of work. There was a lot of work done here. There's still a lot of work to be done in the future. I had to put everything on hold because once I got this set up, then I had to start focusing in on my front yard, which will be a separate video that I'm going to be working on next. But there's still a lot of work to do on this pond. I want to add in some pathways. I want to add in a couple sitting areas. I'm going to put in a fire pit in the pond area here. So I still got a lot of work to do, but it really looks cool. And the best thing is decorating the pond for the holidays. Here is our pond last Halloween and our pond last Christmas. Yes, and even our turtle and fish got to enjoy the holidays. We ended up putting a Christmas tree up behind the waterfall, and man, did it really look awesome with the lights flickering off of the waterfall as the water was coming down the fall, and then you had the reflection of the tree in the pond. Man, it really looked awesome. So now I'm going to show you the video of the waterfall in action. Now this video that you're getting ready to see, this was the initial startup for the waterfall. So on the left side, there's not a lot of water coming off of it. That's because I didn't have the waterfall dialed in like I have now. Now it really looks pretty cool. But in this video, this was the initial startup for the waterfall. Enjoy the video. For New Year's, I made a firework display sitting in the back on the fence line there. So this is our pond on New Year's Eve. Thank you for checking out my pond, and I really want to give a shout out again to Eric and his crew for doing such a marvelous job on helping me with setting up my pond. Um, I will be continuing this as I progress with the pond. Again, here's one more final video of our pond, but thanks.